They told me not to stare at her ears. This was the final instruction humanity offered before pushing me through an airlock and into history. Do not stare at the ears, do not mention the ears, and under absolutely no circumstances attempt to compare them to fictional elves. I promised. I lied immediately. She was waiting at the center of the chamber when the doors sealed behind me with a sound too soft for comfort. Princess Illyrian of the Avarith Dominion did not move as I approached. Her long ears curved elegantly past her jawline, tapering like living calligraphy. They twitched once subtly, as if sampling the air for cowardice. I tried to stand taller. My spine disagreed. "Be brave and speak your mind, human," she said. "It is remarkable how quickly a mind can evacuate itself." Mine achieved record speed. I had prepared 17 opening statements, 3 philosophical quotes, and 1 charming anecdote about a shared stellar nursery. What emerged was, "I enjoy oxygen." Not my finest diplomatic achievement. Behind the translucent walls, I knew observers were watching, Avarith strategists with luminous eyes, human officials pretending not to sweat. The chamber's floor shimmered with dormant glyphs, ancient circuits woven into crystal, waiting to judge whether we would make history or a regrettable crater. She stepped closer. Her armor, dark, seamless, alive, shifted like a thinking shadow around her form. "You fear offense," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted. "We've offended entire planets before breakfast." One corner of her mouth lifted. "Encouraging, possibly dangerous. You were instructed to answer honestly," she continued, "not strategically." "Those are different settings," I said. "We usually keep honesty in airplane mode." A pause. I braced for disapproval. Instead, her ears angled forward, attentive. The armor along her shoulders pulsed faintly, as if reacting to my voice. My translator implant warmed against my skull, struggling to keep up with tonal subtleties that might determine whether I left as an ambassador or a cautionary tale. "You believe my people seek dominance," she said. I swallowed. There it was, the gravitational center of the test. "I believe," I began carefully, then stopped. Carefully was the problem. She had asked for bravery, not choreography. "I believe you could dominate us," I said instead. "And that scares us, but I also believe you're tired of proving you can." Silence stretched, thin as starlight. I added, because panic makes comedians of us all, "Also, your ships are very large." "It's intimidating. Ours mostly explode during testing." A sound escaped her, sharp, unexpected. Laughter. It echoed strangely in the chamber, as if the architecture hadn't anticipated joy. The glyphs beneath our feet flickered once, curious. "You deflect fear with humor," she observed. "Yes," I said. "It's either that or screaming. We're trying something new." Her gaze sharpened, not unkindly. "Then do not deflect now. Speak your unarmored thought." Unarmored, the word lingered between us. I felt suddenly aware of my own fragile body, my unshielded pulse. "My unarmored thought," I said slowly, "is that if you wanted to conquer us, you wouldn't be asking me to talk. You'd be issuing instructions. The fact that you're here asking for honesty means you want something harder than victory." "And what is that?" "Trust," I said, "which is inconvenient, unpredictable, and historically disastrous. But it's also the only thing that lasts longer than a fleet." The glyphs brightened, faint constellations stirring awake. Her ears lowered slightly, not in anger, but in something more vulnerable. The observers beyond the walls shifted. I could feel their attention tighten like drawn wire. She regarded me for a long moment, armor humming softly around her. "Then prove it," she said. I exhaled. "That," I replied, "is exactly what I'm afraid of." She studied me as if fear were a language she was fluent in, and I had just mispronounced something important. The chamber dimmed a fraction, not darker, just more attentive, like a room leaning in. I became acutely aware that every government within several light years was probably recording my pulse, my pupil dilation, and whether I regretted my career choices. I did, for the record, regret them deeply. "You fear the proof will cost you," she said. "It usually does," I replied. "On my world, proof tends to involve paperwork, public embarrassment, or being vaporized, sometimes all three." Her ears shifted outward, a gesture I was beginning to suspect meant confusion rather than threat. "Vaporization is not the objective." "That's reassuring," I said. "It was on my top 5 concerns list." A faint ripple moved across her armor, like wind passing through metal grass. Then, without warning, the seams along her collar disengaged with a soft, decisive whisper. I thought at first it was a malfunction. My training had not included what to do if the alien princess begins disassembling herself. My instincts suggested running. My legs suggested fainting. Diplomacy suggested neither. Plate by plate, the armor folded away, retracting into itself with impossible geometry until it gathered at her spine and dissolved into a dark filament that vanished into the air like a thought dismissed. She stood unguarded. No shield shimmer, no weapon signatures, no tactical glow. Just a person. A very important, very extraterrestrial person with long ears that had lowered slightly, as if bracing for weather. Behind the walls, something thudded, perhaps an observer collapsing, perhaps someone dropping a tablet, perhaps an entire alliance having a synchronized heart attack. "You cannot trust a fortress," she said quietly. "So I will not be one." My mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Is this normal?" I asked. "No." "Good," I said weakly, because my briefing skipped this chapter. Her expression softened, not with pity but with something like patience. "Among my people, to remove one's battle shell before a potential enemy is to declare oneself answerable to them. That sounds extremely unsafe." "It is." "Excellent, I'm now more nervous, not less." A small huff of amusement escaped her. Without the armor's subtle distortion, her voice sounded warmer, less like it had passed through a cathedral of machinery. "You asked what I wanted that was harder than victory," she said. "This is the price of it." I became aware of my own hands, useless objects at the ends of my arms. Should I bow? Salute? Offer a handshake and risk accidentally starting an interstellar engagement? I settled for not panicking audibly. "On Earth," I said carefully, "we usually build trust with smaller gestures, sharing food, admitting embarrassing stories, letting someone see you before caffeine. Caffeine, a sacred stimulant, negotiations have collapsed without it." She nodded solemnly, as if filing this away as a potential strategic weakness of humanity. "Then share something unshielded human." I hesitated, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had too much. Fear, hope, loneliness on behalf of an entire species that had never been alone long enough to get used to it. My voice came out quieter than I intended. "We're afraid," I said. "Not just of you, of everything bigger than us. The universe keeps proving we're small, and we keep pretending we're not. When you arrived, we didn't just see power. We saw confirmation that we're children in a room full of adults." The glyphs on the floor ignited fully now, light threading between us like a living map. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint, rhythmic pulse at her throat, vulnerable, real. "And yet you came," she said. "Yes," I admitted. "Because children also ask questions, and sometimes we make friends with the monsters under the bed." Her eyes widened slightly. "You believe us to be monsters." I winced. Metaphorical monsters, respectful monsters. Very diplomatically admirable monsters. For a heartbeat, I thought I had ended peace with a single sentence. Then she laughed again, softer this time, and the lights around us steadied as if relieved. "Honesty," she said, "is a dangerous gift, human." "Please don't return it," I said. "We don't keep the receipt." Something ancient stirred in the air between us, a pressure like the moment before rain. Whatever test this was, it had moved beyond words. And for the first time, I had the unsettling suspicion that passing it might change more than treaties. The air tightened, not around my throat, but around reality itself, as if the universe were pausing mid-sentence to see how this would end. The light between us stopped behaving like light. It curved, gathered, threaded into symbols that meant nothing to my eyes and everything to the ancient machinery buried beneath the chamber. Somewhere beyond the walls, alarms did not sound, because whatever was happening was older than alarm systems and far more confident. Princess Illyrian did not step back. If anything, she leaned in, her long ears angled toward me, attentive in a way that felt less like scrutiny and more like listening for a heartbeat. "It has begun," she said softly. "I didn't press anything," I replied. "I've learned that's usually a bad idea." "You answered without armor," she said. "So did I." The floor brightened until we stood inside a quiet constellation. My translator implant gave up entirely and displayed a polite error message directly in my vision. "Linguistic framework inadequate. Thank you for your patience." Even my own brain seemed to buffer. "What exactly has begun?" I asked. "A covenant," she said, "older than our empires. When truth is met with vulnerability, our species binds not by command but by accord." "That sounds permanent." "It is intended to be." I considered this. "Hypothetically," I said, "if one of us had lied, what would happen?" Her expression didn't change. The chamber would have rendered judgment. Judgment as in strongly worded feedback. As in disintegration. Ah, I said, constructive. A warmth spread through my chest, not heat exactly, more like gravity deciding I was worth holding onto. The panic I had carried since arrival loosened its grip, not gone but no longer in charge. I realized with mild astonishment that I was no longer thinking about escape routes. I was thinking about her. Beyond the crystal walls, silhouettes shifted frantically. Observers arguing, calculating, rewriting entire doctrines in real time. This was not the cautious stalemate they had planned. This was something messier, human. What happens now? I asked. Now, she said, and there was unmistakable relief in her voice. We are no longer strangers pretending to negotiate. Friends, I ventured, her ears lifted slightly. Allies. I nodded. Then, because bravery had apparently become a habit I hadn't authorized, I added, your records mentioned possible additional bonds. A pause, not hostile, not embarrassed, considering. Yes, she said at last. Our histories do not separate political trust from personal trust. To stand unguarded together is to acknowledge compatibility. Compatibility, I repeated, like software. If that metaphor pleases you. It terrifies me, I said, but in a hopeful way. She smiled then, not the diplomatic expression from earlier, but something unpracticed, almost shy. The constellation beneath us dimmed, its work complete. Whatever ancient system had awakened now seemed satisfied, like a machine that had waited millennia just to check a single box. I took a risk, she admitted. My advisors warned I might bind myself to an enemy. Technically, I said, I was also warned you might vaporize me, so this is a pleasant surprise for everyone. Her laughter came easily now. You are not what we expected, human. Neither are you, I said. We thought you'd be colder, more imperial. I am imperial, she said mildly. Yes, I agreed. But you also took off your armor to talk to a nervous mammal who opened negotiations by praising oxygen. That was memorable. Outside, the chamber doors began to unlock, hesitant, as if the mechanisms themselves were unsure they were allowed to interrupt history. I felt a flicker of reluctance. Once those doors opened, this moment would belong to committees, ceremonies, headlines. It would stop being ours. I think, I said slowly, that I came here to prevent a war. And now, I looked at her, at the unguarded steadiness in her eyes, at the impossible fact that fear had transformed into something steadier, something almost like belonging. Now I think I came here to stop being afraid of the universe, I said. Turns out it has people in it. Her ears softened downward, a gesture I had learned meant warmth. Then you have succeeded. The doors parted. Light from two civilizations spilled into the chamber, bright, noisy, full of consequences. She did not put her armor back on. I did not ask her to. As we stepped forward together, she spoke quietly, meant only for me. Be brave and speak your mind, human. I managed a smile that felt entirely new on my face. I plan to, I said, just maybe after coffee. I will ensure your sacred stimulant is provided. For the first time since leaving Earth, I believed that promise would hold. Not because of treaties or fleets or ancient machines, but because two frightened beings had chosen honesty instead of safety. And the universe, improbably, had decided to reward them with a future.